This is the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast with your host, Kevin Murray.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast. On this episode, we have an incredible guest. He is a fantasy football analyst and content coordinator at Matthew Berry's Fantasy Life. It's the one and only Chris Allen. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, from all the guests that you've had on so far, like throughout this series, I feel like I'm just like the footnote of everybody else. I mean, even into the intro, I'm seeing guys from the footballers. I'm seeing the boss like Matthew Berry himself, and like other people the guests that you've had on. I'm just glad to be a part of it. So no, Kevin, appreciate you having me on, man, for sure.
No, I'm thrilled to have you here. I've told you before, a lot of people have mentioned other people in the industry on this show, and you are definitely one person that has been mentioned more than most, and that's because of all this great stuff you do behind the scenes. And obviously we'll get into that. Obviously for you and I, like, it feels like it's been forever. No, I mean, obviously it was just a few days, but we had a good time at FSGA. That was a lot of fun. How was that experience for you?
I mean, it was fun. I'll say it's fun at the start, but then of course it's like, I mean, you know how when you go to those conferences, you're seeing people that you know, you're seeing people that you want to meet, you're meeting people that you didn't know, but then as you're talking to them, you're like, oh, I'm so glad I had that conversation. It's like different people fit into these different buckets, and as you're having these conversations with people to kind of increase your own exposure, while at the same time opening up doors and making connections for other people. It's just the constant, like those sliding doors moments where it's like, oh, I'm like really glad I caught you. I'm glad I saw this person. I'm so glad I got a chance to catch up with you. So it was, having to be on and talking with everybody for almost like 2 days straight. It felt like it was just such a good experience. I think at the end of it, hearing and talking with some of the people that I know personally that went and they came out of it having such a good experience. I mean, that's what I'm about. And like, we'll talk more about it as we get into the conversation. But really, I think my goal at this point in my quote unquote career here in fantasy is to make sure that other people coming in behind me, like, they don't feel like they have like these massive barriers that they have to get past in order to really make a name for themselves. And given my career, my background, like so far in the past, like 5 or 6 years, I've been doing fantasy content. I just happen to have the Rolodex or like know enough people that like say, hey, you do this type of content, or you're looking for this type of person. How about you go talk to, this guy or gal over here, like that sort of thing. So no, I think it was very fun. Of course, with being in Vegas, it's always going to be fun, but also very rewarding in the sense that you get to talk with so many people that you might not be able to do so unless you're doing like the email, like electronic version. It's so much more personal being able to do it face to face.
Oh, for sure. And you're right. It is a blur. Things go fast, and there's so many conversations had. But it's just, for me, it's fun. I love seeing people that show up for the first time at an event, like Tara Roberts, for example. It was her first like fantasy football type event, right? Industry type of event. It was so cool to see someone experience it for the first time, get connections, get comfortable, and just get the most out of it. So I'm sure you love to see that stuff too, right?
Oh yeah, and like she's one of the easiest examples of seeing somebody that that if you just put them in the right type of situation, they're going to crush it. That there's just no doubt in my mind. Like when I saw her and seeing her right before she went on to the short form video panel, I think that was Tuesday morning or / afternoon, and it was like, knew she might have been slightly nervous because I think she'd just gotten into Vegas maybe an hour or two beforehand, and it was like, doesn't matter because in the next couple of hours, everybody's going to be talking about how well you did on this panel, and that's exactly what happened afterwards. And then talking with a few folks like in the industry after the fact, it was like, oh, have you talked to Tara? Like, this is the type of person she's looking for. Like, oh, Tara Roberts. Like, oh yeah, she might be the right person for you. Like that. That is the type of thing where it's like I knew it. Like I knew I knew that you would be in that type of position if you showed up and you did this. And if you find value from, taking the time to come to a conference like the FSGA, that is where those types of connections can be made. And I think that's really what it's all about, because for people to take time out of their day jobs and take time away from their family and spend that amount of money to come out to one of those conferences, if you walk out of it thinking that, hey, I could have just done all this at the expo or wherever, like email or whatever, then maybe that's a little tougher pill to swallow. But for her specifically, I know that she wound up like coming away with it thinking that, yeah, I could actually do this. Like, whereas maybe beforehand, it might've been a little bit tougher of a sell. So that's where it becomes the most rewarding for somebody in my position. Absolutely.
Yeah, I love seeing that stuff. In fantasy life, you guys took home a few awards at the FSJ, which was awesome. Let's talk
Yeah.
a little bit about your experience working with this award-winning fantasy life team.
Yeah. So actually, surprisingly enough, I got my spot over at Fantasy Life. Well, I wouldn't say it's because I was at the expo. It just happened to be that I met the now chief content officer, Jordan Fiegelman. We bumped into each other at the expo a couple of years ago. I had met Jordan maybe like 1 or 2 years beforehand on I had interviewed with him like for another startup that he was working with at the time, and things fell through. It was no big deal, but it was just like, hey, we'll try and keep in contact or whatever. Bump into him at the expo, and obviously, like, you've been to the expo, you know how things can get. You're out there with friends, you're imbibing. I might have had a 1, 2, 3 drinks by that point in the evening, and there's this guy that I was sitting there talking with another group of friends, and this guy kind of moseys up to the conversation. He's like, yeah, I would love to have Chris come and work for me, like where I'm at right now. I think he does great work. And I'm like, who the heck is this dude? Like, what is he talking? Like, what do you like? And then of course, come to find out, and then actually a side conversation, I wind up bumping into Elliot Christ, the CEO of Fantasy Life. And Elliot and I, we momentarily overlapped at 4for4 Football, where that was the first like larger company that hired me when I came into this space. And happened to run into him, and of course I know who Elliot is. I've seen all the stuff that he's done from TQE to FTN, and then I heard he was doing some stuff with Matthew, and he told me he was a fan of my work, and I was like, oh my god, it's like Elliot Christ is a fan of my work. Like, well, whew, okay, all right, I'm on one tonight. I'm on fire. And it wasn't not just maybe 2 or 3 days after the expo. It was like I get approached by Jordan, and he's like, hey, we would love to bring you on to just do a more of a freelance type of thing, and if we can see if we can make you come exclusive to us over at Fantasy Life. Because at that point I was everywhere. I mean, I was 4for4 Football Guys, Yahoo, NBC, doing some side work for Establish the Run. So I was kind of all over the place, and they wanted to see if they can consolidate all of my work, maybe give me a home where it's everything that you would want to see of Chris Allen could be in one spot. And we wound up negotiating a deal so that I can come there and be not a full-time, because I still have my day job. I work for the Air Force as an engineer, but let's say full-time in the fantasy football industry. I'm now with Matthew Berry's Fantasy Life, and it's so rewarding, man. I tell people, at least I've been talking about it a bit more, but I think my biggest regret working for so many companies is that I didn't really get a chance to be a part of the culture for some of the places that I worked. It's very transactional once you get into the freelance type of work, where it's you just turn in your article, give it to your editor, maybe answer a couple of questions, and then you go on to the next assignment. You do a show, you do a podcast, you talk to your co-host for maybe a few minutes beforehand, chit chat, catch up, how's the fam or whatever. Lights come on, action, do your 45 to an hour podcast, and then it's you talk for a little bit afterwards, and then after that, on to the next task. Being at Fantasy Life, it allows me to at least talk with these guys for a little bit more. We get to hear about everybody's lives every now and again. People post in our Discord channel. We get to celebrate the wins and losses together as a team, because all of us are contributing to everything that's a part of this company. So now I can when going up to accept the award, while I mean most folks know me, I'm at least I try to be as humble as it gets, and I recognize that a lot of the stuff isn't just things that I've done, but it's stuff that the entire team has done, the social content work, or even just the what was it? What else do we win? It was the one for the being
Audio,
on the radio, audio stuff.
show of the year.
Oh, I know. Audio is the worst part of my analysis. I know I still got to work on my broadcasting skills. So it's maybe I didn't contribute all that much to that award. The written content stuff, hey, you try and get out there in these Word documents / Grammarly streets, like that's your guy, like right here, that's your boy pitching in right there. It's like that's where I know it's like, but still, it's like we're all a part of this. Like from, I mean, Kendall, Dwayne, Ian, Jordan, Elliott. I mean, the graphics folks like Sam Holt, like George. I mean, like all of us, like we're all doing this together, and so that's where you can feel that sense of accomplishment, that sense of knowing that, hey, I actually contributed to this thing, that this like 5-pound award that I'm like holding up on stage, that things were hefty, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, but it's like, that's where it's like feeling like, you're a part of it versus, again, if you're in that freelancer type of role, it's just like, oh yeah, I work at that site, but like, I don't do like a ton to say that I won that award. So it's a much more, I guess, wholesome vibe to be able to do something like this. Whereas beforehand, it was just kind of like, yeah, I work for a bunch of sites and I know a few people, but I just wish I could be able to be a part of their lives a bit more. So it's much more rewarding at this point.
Yeah, it makes sense. You're all, you have the same common mission, same common goals.
Yeah.
You're all on the same team moving this thing forward. And you guys, I mean, obviously, it's been incredible what has been accomplished with Fantasy Life in the short duration that it's been around. The growth has been awesome. The team is amazing. You listed so many people that work for Fantasy Life, and yeah, I mean, just an exceptional group. It's an Avengers cast, right? Essentially, that has done so much great work in fantasy, and I'm a huge fan of everything you guys have going there. When it comes to what you're doing specifically, what are your roles? What are all your different contributions?
So the forward-facing part is I'm primarily a writer. That's how I got into the industry. That's my passion. It's the thing that I find the most natural when it comes to writing about things, or at least expressing my ideas, or being able to like consolidate most of the thoughts in my head into something that's coherent to another human being. Writing is the easiest way for me to do it. So that's what got me on the team for the 2022-2023 season, and that's what's brought me here as again like full-time, part-time type thing for this past season. But on top of that, do a couple of shows. I did one throughout this season with the aforementioned like Sam Holt, like who's on our graphics group, and also the wonderful, the like irreplaceable Cooter Doodle. Like we were able to talk like matchups on a week-to-week basis. Bring on a guest. But I do a weekly show with Ian Harditz, who actually Ian lives about like an hour or so away from me, like just up in Columbus. I'm down in Dayton, Ohio. So we actually get to see each other, I mean, fairly regularly, like throughout the off season, play cards and whatnot. And he's an awesome dude. I mean, he's a great hang. But do a show with him and Dwayne McFarland, where we talk like more like X's and O's, just like general questions, like whether it's throughout the week about like specific matchups, like players and all that. Like we'll dive into those, like do a deep dive, or we can just talk about like a specific game. Like as we were leading up to each of like the wild card conference, Super Bowl, like what questions would people be trying to figure out from a fantasy or sports betting angle to kind of provide our own perspective analysis to help people figure out, well, how would you be figuring out like how many yards is Mike Patrick Mahomes scramble for? Is he going to scramble at all? Is Isaiah Pacheco the guy that you want to bet on for this week because he's going up against the 49ers defense? Just stuff like that. But that's like all the forward-facing stuff. The content coordinator part of my job, do some stuff on the back end, whether it's editing some of the pieces that go up on the site, actually publishing some of them, writing the newsletter itself, but then also trying to help out with the planning portion of things. So I in my day job, I am a program manager, like I mentioned earlier, as an engineer for the Air Force. So it is like I'm trying to transition into the type of role where I'm in the weeds, I'm in the thick of it, I'm in the spreadsheets, like doing as much analysis as I can to provide data forward like type takes, but then also leveraging some of my experience as a program manager to be able to take a step back and maybe look at the big picture and see like, okay, this is the kind of things that we should be looking at, or the types of not even types of articles, but even just like from a planning standpoint, like how all of the bits and pieces of what everybody contributes to the site fits together. So between like both of those things, that allows me to still write and continue to learn more about being a broadcaster. But at the same time, like, again, like I said, leveraging my experience, like throughout my 15 or so years of being an engineer to kind of help like build out like this, the company as a whole, and maybe hopefully make it run a bit smoother.
That's awesome. I mean, they're so lucky to have you. Obviously, all the different things you bring to the table. It's incredible content. So if you're a consumer, what are your favorite features and products that MB Fantasy Life is offering these days?
I would say the easiest one for me is Dwayne's utilization report. And that's probably me like trying to suck up Dwayne. I don't need to suck up Dwayne, but I guess for me personally, as a more analytically minded like person in general, even if I wasn't like a fantasy football analyst, I just think about things in numbers and like in trends and like trying to like picture things like through data. And but the problem is that if you just try and I don't know, like what's the saying? Like you just can't eat an elephant all in one bite. You have to eat it like piece by piece. Trying to just look at like even just one game and all the data that would be associated with a single game, you wouldn't be able to understand it. So it's like trying to break things down into the specific context, like how wide receivers are being used. So it's not just like their target share, but how efficient they are with their targets. How deep are their targets? Like how often are they getting them like per the routes that they're running? Or for running backs, it's all right, but they're getting the rushing share, but also how many targets are they getting? Okay, that's cool. What type of touches are they getting? Are they getting the ones that are inside the 10-yard line, inside the 5-yard line, the ones that matter for fantasy? I mean, how often are they on the field, like versus how many touches they're actually getting? All those things to help contextualize like what we see like on the field. And that again, like helps you break down like from the big elephant, which might be just a player's game log that you would get on Pro Football Reference, into the parts and pieces that are the most important for fantasy use. I think Dwayne's had such a like a great track record of being able to distill a lot of the information that we look at and to say like, well, this is the stuff that actually matters, y'all. Like this, I mean, so you can argue about, you can pull up whatever stat that you want, like whatever metric that you want, but like really, if you want to try and like analyze the quarterback, wide receiver, running back, or tight end position, here's the stuff that really kind of matters, like from a week to week basis, if you're trying to just do your casual redraft like type of league. And so that to me personally, that's been like a tool that I consistently go to just to double check myself, because I will go through and like as I write articles, I will go ahead and I'll pull whatever data that I would typically do, run whatever analyses that I want to run, and like write up a couple of paragraphs, and then I'll pop over to the utilization report and be like, all right, is this really like what I'm seeing and like and all that? Like, so I think Dwayne's utilization report, I think is like very, I mean, obviously it's like fairly like it's well known within the industry itself, but at least for me personally, like I was saying, it's one of the better tools that I've come to really enjoy, like going to like on the site. But a second one that I'm just starting to get into because sports betting like just became legal in Ohio within the last like couple of years is our prop finder tool. So if you just go over to fantasylife.com, all free right now, I'll be the company man and say that go sign up. Check out the sign up for the newsletter. You can get it like an edition of that like every week by me and all the other guys like Pete and all the other guys that write it. But if you're trying to shop for like whatever book, I think we've got like 2 or 3 like things like MGM, DraftKings, and I forget the other one that's on the site like right now. But if you're trying to look at, well, if the line over at, let's say we'll use DraftKings for right now, and I'll just use the Super Bowl as an example. Let's say the line for Isaiah Pacheco's like rushing prop was, I think it was like 67.5 yards, like somewhere in there. But using Dwayne's projections, he had him projected for, I think, just north of 80. So it's like if the books are saying that we're going to pay you if he hits the over at 67 and Dwayne's projecting him for just north of 80, you should probably take that bet. Now, it didn't wind up working out, but whatever. We're not focusing on the results. We're focusing on the tool. I'm just saying that for stuff like that, where it allows you to compare the projections that we have on the site, which are available for free, to whatever the current lines are, whichever book that you particularly use. And I think it's mostly just the big ones that we have on the site right now. I've liked that because I don't like, I guess I'm not as savvy of a bettor to say that I'm going to bet on like all these totals and like spread, like that's not for me. But I do like props because, again, like since I like to think about each game or each matchup from an analytical standpoint, I can say, oh yeah, 67.5 yards against the 49ers defense. They're like, bottom 10 in, rushing, rushing EPA allowed, success rate. Okay, yeah, I can see 67.5. Oh, and Dwayne's saying like he's projected for 80. Bet. All right, I'll take that. So it's just, I think the prop finder tool over on Fantasy Life, if you go and check that out, it's been, at least for me, helpful in terms of figuring out what might actually be a good bet and what might not be something, just compared on like when you're placing that bet and what the market's telling you.
That's awesome. Like you said, free stuff, free
Yeah,
content. There's
exactly.
so much free tools out there at Fantasy Life. It's something that you got to incorporate into your fantasy plan, right? I love it.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
it. So now you are a mechanical engineer. Talk to me about, a little bit about your career path and like what led up to deciding that direction and what it's been like since you started that.
Oh, it was fairly simple. I was in like a third or fourth grade, and I had an affinity for math at the time. And I told my mom I wanted to be a math teacher, and she told me, "No, math the teachers don't make any money. So no, you're not going to be a math teacher. You're going to be an engineer, honey." Like, I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, I don't know what an engineer is, but if it has stuff to do, like anything to do with math, I'm on it. I can do that." But yeah, like once I got out of high school and into college, I went to the University of Cincinnati for biomedical engineering. Fun fact, I'm actually one of the first African Americans to graduate from the University of Cincinnati with a bachelor's degree in biomedical engineering. It was actually I was part of the first class because that particular track hadn't been accredited by the university before I showed up. I went through it, like we got like ABET certification, I want to say in like 2002, 2003, something along those lines, and I graduated in 06. But yeah, finished up that, went back to grad school from 06 to 08 up in Dayton to get my master's in mechanical engineering, because I wanted to focus more on modeling and simulation, which is something that the biomedical track, at least when I was there, didn't offer. So I went back, got my mechanical engineering master's in what was it? So I specialized again, like I said, like in modeling and simulation. And then afterwards, I wound up getting a job as a research assistant with the Air Force at their graduate school, the Air Force Institute of Technology, and things just kind of spiraled from there. Because it is like one of the backgrounds that if you have it, you have a skill set in it, it's typically going to be useful for a while. But also because I do have an affinity for being able to talk to people, they were like, "Oh yeah, so you're good in the lab, and you can like provide good like briefings and all that. We're gonna make you a manager. That's what we're gonna do. See that we're gonna pull you out of the lab and stop doing the stuff that you really like to do, and we're gonna put you in front of people all the time. We're gonna send you to conferences, and we'll have you talk to managers all the time. That's what we're gonna have you do." So then now I'm less fun, less breaking stuff in the lab like I used to when I was in my like late 20s and early 30s, and now like moved on to become more of a program manager with still some like research stuff if I ever get a chance to like poke my nose into other people's like studies and whatnot. But for the most part now, since I've transitioned now to be a full-time like civil servant for the Air Force, more on the PM side of things, but it's still pretty rewarding getting to work for the government, seeing how things go from cradle to grave, whether it's not on the sustainment side. So the airplanes and any other aircraft that are currently out there, whether it's like bombers, tankers, like things of that nature, or even like next gen aircraft, which is some of the stuff that I've been working on lately. So it's been a long road. Like I said, I graduated finished up my grad school in 08. So 15-ish years or so that I've been doing this. And yeah, like hasn't been a time where it's like, man, I really wish I could do something completely different than this, other than maybe, fantasy football. But for the most part, like it's been rewarding, like doing the engineering thing.
That's fantastic. No, it's so cool. Obviously, with your background and your career, you've got to be a big sports fan to want to contribute in fantasy. Where did the sports fandom begin? I know that you did. You grew up with parents in the military, correct? Like, so
Mm-hmm.
you bounced around a little bit. That's kind of normal. How did you develop a passion for sports?
I went to college.
Yeah, is that right?
Yeah, that's how it worked out, because most of the places that I lived at as a kid, we didn't live in like sports towns, really. I was born overseas. I was born in Japan. And then my dad was stationed in like Northern California. We were in Oklahoma City. We were in like Topeka, Kansas. I mean, like I don't think there's an NFL team in Topeka, Kansas. Last
No,
I
not
checked,
yet.
no, not yet. And then of course here where he wound up retiring, like we did a year down south in Alabama, but that was fairly close. But there was like never a place where it was like I'm in a sports town. I
Yeah.
mean, the closest I got, I still remember as a kid, it's like third, fourth grade when we were living in Oklahoma City, and like everybody out there was a Dallas Cowboys fan. And that was about the time where it was like Emmitt Smith and like they were just like the America's team and all that. And I had a Dallas Cowboys starter jacket. Like that was like my prized possession. I mean, those things cost like probably like $90, $100 or something like
Yeah.
that. And like that was like my prized possession. And I wore it like after we moved away from Oklahoma and we came up here to Ohio, like I wore it everywhere. And I'm in the heart of, it's like this mix of like Bengals, Browns, and like Steelers, like all, it's kind of this mishmash of stuff like right here in Dayton, Ohio. And then you had me, the dude in the Dallas Cowboy starter jacket, because I was just like, that's America's team, y'all. Like what you talking? Like what do you mean? Like why would I be a bang? Like what are you talking about? Bengals? Like what is even a Bengal? Like what does that even mean? But fast forward 10-ish years or whatever, and that's when I moved to Cincinnati to go to college. And that's when it was like, oh, this is different. Like this is different because you've got not just the Bengals, you've got the Reds. I mean, obviously, like Cincinnati's basketball team was actually fairly legit. Coach Huggins, who had been there for a while. He's actually like, he was there like when I was there. So it's like, this was like a sports town. And like, you could just feel that vibe, like just living there and just being a part of like the culture as you're there. And I got more or less like indoctrinated into being a Bengals fan. I remember actually being in my dorm room, watching that Steelers Bengals playoff game when Carson Palmer busted his ACL.
Yeah.
You ever want to be around, like, you ever want to see a city like go silent? That was
Just
it.
like that. Yeah.
That was it, like right there. And like, I think that was the first time like I just ever felt something like watching a game live. And I was just like, wait, like what just happened? Like,
Yeah.
no. Like this was like, and I started being like one of those fans where it's like, we just lost. Not they just lost. It's like, no, what happened to our quarterback? What happened to what we just lost the game.
Yeah.
So after that, it's just, now it's gone from, I lived through from the Carson Palmer to Andy Dalton to watching the Jeremy Hill fumble live and figuring out in real time who the hell Joey Porter was. Seeing all that stuff. And then now to what's going on now with the Joe Burrow phenomenon. It has been a beautiful thing, like as a fan, to watch almost a city become revitalized, like as a football team becomes essentially like the heartbeat like of the city. Because I was actually down in Cincinnati. It was the day before they traveled to go play the Bills, not last year, but the I think it was the year beforehand. And my wife and I, we were down there because it was the same night where the Chargers wound up charging and like losing to the Jags, like in that playoff game.
Yeah.
And like, even though the Bengals like weren't there because obviously they're headed to Buffalo for the game the next day, I just remember like walking down the streets. My wife and I, like, we rented an Airbnb. We were walking down like to the casino, and just the streets were flooded with number 9 jerseys, number 1 jerseys, like number 5 jerseys. I mean, just like Burrow, Chase, I mean, it was just like, I hadn't seen that much pride like in the Bengals in some time. Like,
That's awesome.
and also, and this is probably a good thing for my mental health, I hadn't heard the term bungles in some time too.
It's good.
Which is obviously, like a, awesome, like weight off of my mind. But it's just like that it's a beautiful thing. Like I was saying, that it's just to see just like how one player can wind up affecting an entire fan base at that point, and then rising up something that you just didn't think was possible until you actually see it in real time. I was down at a bar when they lost in the Super Bowl, which was heartbreaking. But still, it's like every year now, it feels like we've got a shot. Now I'm saying we again. But it's like, but you feel like as a Bengals fan that there's a chance that you can make a deep playoff run, which 5, 6, 7 years ago was just like, yeah, no, like, well, maybe next year, haha, like, just recycle things and just move on to whatever the next season is going to be. So no, that's really where, like, as a going from a kid to an adult, like, fandom really started to take a hold of me, like around like the 2001-ish like time frame.
I love it. I love the delayed start, but then, going all in and experiencing, everything you want to experience as a sports fan. Obviously, some devastating losses. Was the Carson Palmer, was that the worst loss you ever experienced as a sports fan, or was there something different?
I would say honestly, the Jeremy Hill fumble was worse. I think that one felt worse because it was still new to me. Like, all of that stuff, like watching the team or whatever, like that all was still new. But watching the Jeremy Hill fumble where it was just like, this is it. All right. Like, we could break the curse and this could happen. And then just watching that, I was just like, I lost it. I absolutely lost it. I could not believe, like, if I had been on Twitter at that point, I probably would have been banned or whatever. I would just, I would have gone nuts on social media if I had to relive that, like, in these times and whatnot. But yeah, that one was bad.
Well, I'm glad I brought it up.
Yeah, thank you for like having me relive that. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, is there a favorite moment that you have as a sports fan? Let's talk about more positive things.
Oh, when they kicked the field goal to beat the Chiefs to go to the Super Bowl. I didn't think that it was possible. Awesome. I knew when they played the Raiders in the wild card. Yeah, and they played the Raiders in the wild card. I was like, we should win this. Like, we just have to beat Derek Carr. Okay, we should be able to do that. But still, it's one of those, like, well, can we? Like, I don't know if this is going to work or not. I've been watching this for almost 20 years now. Like, we've got history, like, going against it. And of course, I freaked out and screamed, like, when they wound up securing that win. But then it was, the following week they played against the Titans. Joe Burrow gets 9 sacks in a playoff game, and I was like, oh yeah, they're not going to win this one. I mean, it's all good. We got the one playoff victory. Let's just make sure everybody gets through the game, healthy, no setbacks for the next season. Hey, I'm happy we're just not a one and done in the playoffs like type of team anymore. Joe Burrow has my vote of confidence here. And then I was watching. We had some friends over that night for dinner, and I just had the game on in the background where I was hanging out, and I look up at the score, and I was like, we could win. Wait a minute. We're going to, shut up, everybody. Like, I've got a game to watch. And then we wound up winning that. And then, of course, I was like, there's no way we could beat Patrick Mahomes. That ain't no way. And then I watched him miss the touchdown at Tyreek Hill at the end of the second half. All the drop 8 stuff to, like, completely confused him for the second half. And then that final field goal, I was like, we could win the Super Bowl. Like, what is going on here? Like, who is this man in the number 9 jersey with his wide receiver that's a phenom from college that it's setting the world on fire at this point? Like, what is going on here? Like, could we actually be a legitimate contender, like, not just for this season, but moving forward? And I mean, lo and behold, I mean, like, despite all the injuries and stuff from this year, at the very least, like, with that core, we've got a shot to at least be in the mix like every season. And as a fan, I mean, that's really all you can ask for.
Absolutely. I think you should have won the Super Bowl against the Rams. I think that you're the better team that year. And obviously, like,
nice.
There's hope. There's always hope with Joe Burrow. So I'm happy for you with that.
Yeah.
Oh, when it comes to fantasy, like, when did you discover fantasy football?
Well, I'd say I always feel embarrassed, kind of. Like, answering this question because it's not the same as everybody else. Like, I quote unquote, I'll be 41 in like 4 months, and to say like I grew up listening to so many like other analysts, that's probably like I'm not trying to misconstrue like the phrase or whatever, but I keep hearing like so many people say like, oh, I grew up playing Madden and doing all this. I hate Madden. For some reason, I just can't. I couldn't get into it. The best I could get in terms of like sports games was like NFL Blitz.
Okay.
Yeah, that was about it, because I'm just more into fantasy games. I mean, I'm literally wearing like a gamer T-shirt, but it's just never been like that my personal cup of tea.
Yeah.
But I got into fantasy around like the 2011, 2012 timeframe, and that was on a whim. It was the new job that I got, and because I was the new guy on the crew, everybody's like, "We're going to start a fantasy league, and you're the new guy. You're going to be the commissioner." So like, okay, what does that mean? What am I supposed to do with that? So I went to Google, and ESPN popped up like, hey, you're starting a fantasy league, come click here and do all this stuff and whatever. And as I learned about just what fantasy football was, just stumbled across a podcast, some small podcast called the Fantasy Focus, with some dude named Matthew Berry on it. And I just listened to that to learn a bit more about what the heck this thing was that I was doing. And afterwards, I was hooked. I think after the very first season, I lost badly. I think my very first pick was Ray Rice. Like, he was my first pick out of the gate, and he was like the only good player that I had like afterwards. And I was doing all of the things that we as like fantasy analysts, and even just people that are experienced in fantasy, just like the do nots of fantasy. Like at least back then, it was like drafting quarterbacks was like somewhat okay. It's like what everybody was doing, but just everything else was just, oh, it was all bad.
Two kickers, two defenses.
I definitely had the two defenses, and I thought about it too, because I was like, well, if I need one to be like, and the other one's going to be in a bye week, I got to have two on my roster. So why would I drop one when I need another one? Duh. It's just stuff like that where it was just like no thought about the strategic value of holding those roster spots or whatever. But after that one league, it was like, I have to do this again, and I have to learn more, and I have to figure out what's the strategy behind drafting and all of that. And then it really just kind of blossomed from there, at least in terms of like my joy for just playing fantasy. But then me getting into actually writing for fantasy came a bit later than that.
Nice. That's awesome. Obviously, the mechanical engineering kind of, you wanted to figure out a way to
had to break it down, man. I had to break all that stuff down. Where it's like, I think I went from just that one league my first year, and then I think I hopped into maybe like 10 or 12 leagues the year after that. They weren't all paid. It was just those free leagues you can do on ESPN or whatever, where most people, they just like draft in league and like nobody cares like afterwards. But like, I knew I needed reps. I knew I needed to figure out, all right, well, like, all right, if I draft these guys, like, how does this team look? If I draft this team, like, how does this one look? And it's like, I just knew I needed to do something different each time, like what the differences were, what variables I was switching, what knobs I was playing with or whatever. I just didn't know. I knew I just needed to have like more reps. And I just kept doing that until it's like, oh, okay, these teams are winning more. Like, this team feels better. I can win some more games like with this construction and all that. Not really knowing the terms or whatever, but just realizing that there was different ways to build like winning teams, and seeing that in real time was just like, oh, okay, now I'm starting to figure it out. Now I'm starting to like, there's some strategy behind some of this. And then like later on, it was like seeing all of that stuff that people had already written about like 2, 3, 4 years ago, and not me just stumbling on it for the first time. It was like a caveman, like figuring out like, fire or something like that. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, this makes sense. This all makes sense.
That's awesome. So when did you start creating fantasy football content, and what inspired that? I mean, you're a busy man.
Yeah, yes.
Family, and everything. Like, how did that all start?
It was it was either 2016 or 2017. I can't remember like specifically which year, but it was either week 6 or week 7 of that year. And it was backup cornerback for the Baltimore Ravens at the time. I think his name was Sharice Wright, one of like the very poor corner. but he was supposed to go up against like Deshaun Jackson when Deshaun was playing for Washington at the time. And everybody thought that was just the matchup that everybody had to target. Whether it was DFS, whether it was redraft, or like whatever format you were playing at the time. If you had Deshaun Jackson there, everybody knew that he was gonna go up against Sharice Wright. He was gonna explode. It was gonna be awesome. And I think I wound up picking him up off the waiver wire or whatever. I had him on my team, and like his box score, I think it was like maybe 3 for 60, 3 for 40, or whatever. He just didn't have that blow up game that everybody expected. And nobody could really account for why. I think Sharice Wright didn't wound up getting pulled or benched in that game, so he didn't wind up having the same matchup that everybody expected. But I remember hearing a podcast, and this is like no slight against him, but I was hearing a podcast from the football guys, from the wonderful Sigmund Bloom, that just offered just like some post game, just like random analysis, saying that, well, I think it might have been because of the win, but we just don't know. And I remember hearing that, and I was like, well, can't we figure that out? Can't we figure out like if the wind like impacted the game or whatever? Like, is there do they have instrumentation like on the site that winds up measuring that, or could you use like the forecast before the game, or if the NOAA, which I didn't know at the time existed, but like, is there any sort of site that like captures any of that like historical data? And then could you then correlate that to do you do some trending analysis to say that, well, in these types of games, like players do well or they do worse, or whatever. And that just like got me thinking, like, is that something that people like somebody's done before? Or is that like analysis that folks find useful and all that? And so I just started digging. I found a paper by Brian Burke, who's one of like the director of analytics, or one of the analytics heads over at ESPN, like one of the godfathers of analytics in general, at least like for like the modern age of football. And I sent him a message and I said like, hey, I saw your paper. He'd actually come up with a trend of I think it was adjusted yards per target, or adjusted yards per attempt for quarterbacks, showing that as the wind speed increases, AYA for quarterbacks drops. That was just for like one position. But then how does that translate to like how wide receivers, tight ends, or even like running backs are affected? Like nobody had done that analysis. So at the time, I had just happened to be picked. Like I was still a fan at the time. No following whatsoever. But I was in a fans versus analyst league with Matt Harmon from NFL. He was at the NFL Network at the time. And so I emailed Matt and I said, hey, like I've got this idea. I don't know if it's going to work or if it's worthwhile, but here's some of I just did some cursory analysis by pulling some stuff, like scraping some stuff from like Pro Football Reference. Please don't sue me because I said that. But like I got some data. I said like, hey, like this stuff kind of makes sense. Like, is it worthwhile? And I was like, yeah, dude, run with it. Like, just see what happens. And so I put it out there, and like he retweeted it. Like a whole bunch of people started following me. I got, I think it was like maybe like 2 or 3 months later, when I'd written like 3 or 4 more articles, just like about trends that I found like through weather. That's when 444 had approached me later, because I was working at a smaller site at the time. It was like, oh my gosh, like this could actually work. But for then, like at least for those 5 or 6 articles that I wrote, it was like I didn't expect to get paid for this. I was like, this is really cool. I'm glad I'm able to use like my like analytical skills and whatnot in order to like be recognized for work that I've done. But getting paid to do this, that's for the Matthew Berry's of the world. That's for the at the time I was listening to like Christopher Harris, like Field Yates, Sigmund Blue, like all of those guys. Like that's for those guys. Like, but then when 444 approached me and they were like, yeah, we'll pay you to write some research articles about this weather stuff. You've been like we've read your work. We think you're good. It's like, wait, what? Me? All right, cool. And then of course afterwards it just kind of ballooned from there. Like I mentioned earlier, overlapped with Elliot Christ. He'd come on, like we actually came on at 444 at about the same time, like in that same summer. And I had just come on as a researcher. They'd asked me to come on to do, it was like a 2 to 3 part series on weather, kind of consolidate all of my stuff into like 3 articles, 1,500 words a piece. And they're like, yeah, this could be like evergreen content that folks could read like every summer if they wanted to. And I was like, sweet, I'll write this stuff and then pay me for this and I'll go on about my way. But then Elliot wound up leaving to go do the startup for TQE. And so when he left, they were like, well, we kind of need somebody to write some in-season content for us because we just had, because he just left. Are you interested? You're going to pay me more? All right. I mean, I haven't written about quarterbacks and like I really don't know like all the stuff, but I could like pull some data and I can do the, apply a similar process to all this and figure this stuff out. Yeah, I can do this. And then it's just spiraled after that.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
This ties into your Twitter handle, right?
Yeah, Chris Allen FFWX. So the WX is for weather, and that's been my little niche, like in the fantasy space. Like I don't claim to know more than anybody else, but I can at least speak to that. That is definitely my area of expertise, and I have taken it to the nerdiest of levels when it comes to understanding what the impacts are with regards to weather, to the point where I'm pretty sure I'm probably on some sort of federal watch list because I've dug into how the stadiums are built and their design. So that probably put me on some sort of watch list because in my mind, I do think like how tall a stadium is and how it's designed actually does have an effect on how the wind flows through the stadium or across or through it. So like I put time into that in order to figure out like, well, this stadium versus that stadium at the extremes might make a difference. But yeah, I've dug into all of that, like whether it's turf or grass or like what the elevation is of the stadium, what the azimuth is, like where it points relative to true north, all of that stuff. I have databases on databases to figure out like what matters and what doesn't. And yeah, but it's just spiraled from there, as I said beforehand, just to like, and each time it's like somebody approaches me like, hey, we're looking for a writer over at Yahoo. Would you like to, come and work with us for a season? Yeah, duh. I would love to do that. I happened to go down to New Orleans. My wife and I were vacationing there. And on a whim, I messaged Sigmund Bloom. I wasn't working for Football Guys at the time. He didn't know me from Adam. And I messaged him. And since Matt Harmon knows Sigmund, he was like, oh, yeah, like message Sigmund when you go down to New Orleans. He's a blast. He'll probably hang out with you or whatever if you go down there. I sent Sigmund an email. He got back to me within about 5 minutes. He was like, oh yeah, coming down to New Orleans, go like if you're into jazz, go in and check out like all these spots and go do this, that, and whatever, and like let me know when you get in. Like, well, I'll see if I got time, we'll go grab a drink. It'll be awesome. Like, yeah. I was like, wait, no, I wasn't expecting you to do that. I was just asking for, but yeah, I'll go and hang out. And then of course, after I hung out with Sigmund, then I've got like Joe Bryant, hitting me up like, hey, we're looking for a writer. Like it's just everything after like just me sticking myself out there for a little bit for this weather thing.
I love it.
It's just grown into more and more and more, and it's just I feel very blessed to get to where I'm at right now. But it was never my wildest dreams that it would have gotten to this point, for real.
It's so fascinating. I mean, the weather stuff is so cool. I love how it all tied into getting those jobs and those positions with those companies. I mean, you've met so many great people in the industry, with 4for4, Football Guys, NBC Sports Edge, obviously the incredible team at Fantasy Life. You've met a lot of people. That's a great sample of this community in general. Let's talk a little bit about the community. Obviously, the expo is a huge part of that. Talk to me about your Fantasy Football Expo experience. Finally getting to meet a lot of these people that you've met online. What's that been like for you?
Oh man, I can still remember the very first year at the Fantasy Football Expo. My friend Adam Wilde, like Adam and I came up together. We did a show. We did our own podcast, and then we were working for DLF for a time. And so like we both came together and drove up to the expo, and they were doing a like an experts draft or whatever, not the King's Classic, but just something separate for the folks that were going to be there. and they were doing that like the first day, and we get there, and I see all these people, and I'm just like, I'm not starstruck, but it's just like, I know who you are. I recognize your Twitter avatar. I know who you are too. Like I know, like, and just doing all this stuff. And I'm standing there in the auditorium at the what was it? It was like not an art museum. I forget the place that we had it at the first year that Bob had it. But either way, I'm standing there, and then in my peripheral, like this is like how this is how bad it was for me. But like through my peripheral vision, I knew that Bob Harris had just walked into the auditorium. Like I could tell it was him. And I saw him notice me, but I was just like, well, he probably just just trying to figure out like who I am or whatever. We're drafting. There's just chaos. You've been in like draft rooms where everybody's yelling or whatever. But then he walks over to me and he was like, "Hi, Chris. Like, I'm Bob." I was like, "Of course I know who you are. Like, you're Bob Harris. Like, of course." And he's sitting there talking to me. I was like, like in the back of my mind, I'm like carrying on a conversation with him. Like, but how the hell do you know who I am, man? Like, but that is what is so like emblematic of the expo in and of itself. It's one of those places where you go and everybody, like, there's always going to be somebody that knows who you are. And I think that a lot of times on Twitter, I'm not calling it X, but on Twitter and like social media in general, we don't realize who's watching.
Mm-hmm.
We don't realize who's clicking on our articles or seeing our YouTube shows or listening to our podcast or whatever, to the point where you will have a Bob Harris walk up to you out of nowhere and like know you by your first name. Not like, "Hey, I'm Bob Harris. Who are you?" No, "Hey, Chris Allen, I'm Bob Harris." It's like, well, I know who you are, but how do you know me? It's so that's where it was like, while I was like not skeptical, but I was just like, is this going to get bigger? Like, are more people going to be able to come to like the expo and see all these people? Because I remember meeting the Majuk ladies, like when they were there, the Ball Blast ladies there, because we had overlapped at Fan Tracks for a hot minute. I mean, John Bosch, like the guys like from Fantasy Cares, like Russ. Oh my gosh, there was like so many. J Mike was there. I mean, so many people. There's just like, I know who you are, and you know who I am, and but it created this almost level playing field at the expo, because ain't nobody worried about follower accounts at the expo. All that shit goes right out the window. Like you walk into that place, it is just, you are Kevin Murray. Like, I am Chris Allen. Like, that is Bob Harris. Like, that is Bob Lung. Like whomever. Like it doesn't matter about like what we do like in this space, because we're all just here interacting with each other. There's no discussion about we can argue about like players and all that, but it's not like we're doing a podcast live where it's like we have to give our expert analytical takes about this person because somebody's going to be consuming our content. No, we're just talking ball. That's all it is. And that's where it be like all of our defense is down. We're not trying to project our analysis like onto some sort of audience. We're just talking with friends. We're just talking with other people. Right.
Yeah. And not talking ball necessarily. I mean,
we're just talking about life.
Right.
Yeah. Like I remember like the first time, when was it? I think it was two years ago. So they're talking and hanging out, and then somebody taps me on the shoulder, and like I turn around, it's Marcus Grant. It's like, you are like, I saw you on TV like just a couple of days ago. And again, it's like, I know who you are. And of course, like, how do you know who I am? But it's just like, again, like I think sometimes, again, we take for granted like who's listening, who's watching, who's paying attention to our stuff, because a lot of I don't know if it's like the dopamine drip or whatever that we need, because it's like, unless somebody's liking or retweeting or commenting on our stuff, the assumption is that they're not watching. Like, no. Like you go to the expo and you will find out for sure, like there's somebody's watching that you didn't expect was watching.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and that's why I've loved to see it grow like every single year as it has. And I mean, hats off to Bob Long. and the family and crew that's put this together, because now it's just become this place where not just analysts can go, but just like fans of fantasy football. And I know that's what, at least I'm assuming that's what his vision was always like. He always wanted it to be, but now it's a haven where, again, follower accounts don't matter. Like you could be, the Evan Silva of the fantasy football, or you can be just somebody that wants to play in a 12-team league with somebody else. It doesn't matter. You can just go there and just hang out with people that just enjoy fantasy football. And that's what that's what this community should be about anyway. And I think Bob Lung has turned that into a reality. And so that's why, I mean, I guess I don't have an excuse because I just live like 2.5 hours away from the place. But even if I lived a bit farther away, I would still try to make it a point to come up there, because it's so freeing to go to a place where there's no drama. There's no, there's no like stuff like you see on social media, like all that goes away the moment everybody gets to Canton.
For sure, and then like you said, it's kind of like it's a dream come true for Bob. I'm sure to see it turn from the Midwest fantasy or fantasy football something to what it is now. Like it's fascinating to see how much it's grown, and everything you've described is exactly what I experience and what everyone experiences when they go there. It's a big giant family reunion. It gets better every year because people are more connected. They know each other. It's special. But let's talk a little bit about something specific. It's the Cookout Group. Talk to me about what inspired that, where that's going, everything you can say about that.
Oh yeah. It actually started at the expo a couple of years ago. I had been introduced either by like working with them or just like general conversation with a number of other like minority content creators. Whether, like I mentioned, like it was Marcus, Troy King, Laquan Jones, Ray Garvin, Jordan Richards. I mean, it's just like I knew like so many of these people that were a part of the space, and I knew that most of us were going to be there at the expo like that particular year. So I got us all in a group chat, and I was like, "Hey, man, we're all going to be there. But can we just sit down and talk? I mean, just as like a minority group together. Like we're not going to try and formalize this thing or whatever. But just if we're going to be there, let's talk. Let's hang out. Let's band together. Maybe we'll do like a resource group like type of thing. But at the very least, let's just grab some drinks, have a meal, shake each other's hand, see if there's a way for us to collaborate. Like once we get into the season, like everybody starts going the separate ways or whatever." And it happened to and everyone's like, "Yeah, cool. Let's do that." But it also happened to be the year that there was a gentleman that came to the expo, African-American guy that was there. And he started posting on social media. I think it was on Friday evening or something like that, or Saturday afternoon or something like that, that he had felt ostracized, that he had felt like he couldn't fit in with the fantasy community. I never met the guy like personally, but I remember hearing about what was going on Twitter, and I had like Troy and a few other people that I knew, Steffi Smalls, reached out to him to see like, hey, like if you've got anything that you want to talk about, don't feel comfortable doing it in like a larger forum. They told him about like the gathering that we were going to have on that Saturday afternoon. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it, but I had reached out to him as well. And then, Bob came over and like he pulled me aside too, and just like, hey, there's a chance that you can talk to him, go do that. But just that event on its own placed an even greater importance on us trying to do something. But while we were there, it was like I had mentioned, it was like me, it's like Ray Garvin, like a Marcus showed up, Steph Smalls, Sam Praviti, like she was there, Troy King, Laquan. It was like maybe 10 of us. And we're just sitting there talking. Like, of course, that was like the lightning rod event. It's like, we heard about this that just happened. But then it just went off into these other directions of, hey, I want to learn more. Or like, I'd love to be able to talk more about what's going on in this industry. This company X wants to pay me this. Is that right or not? I would love to be able to talk with other folks that look like me and see if, this is actually a legitimate thing, or negotiating deals. What if like we, had a way for all of us to share information about that? Or, how do you get sponsorships? I mean, just all the things that are a part of being in this industry that you really just don't learn unless you do it yourself. And for folks that are minorities that are in a lesser position, or like it's a harder position for us to try and negotiate like for ourselves, that was just an important thing that was like, well, if we band together, add on some more people, maybe even bring in other like external, like, find some allies that would want to like try and support us and give us some of that information or whatever resources we would need in order to learn more. And that's how the cookout was founded. It really was just the start of a 10, 15 of us just sitting around having drinks at the DoubleTree, like up there in Canton. After the expo was over, we hopped into a DM thread and was like, let's just add people, keep adding people, keep adding people, keep adding people. Right now we're at just shy, I think, of like 60 people in the group. Our focus has kind of turned from not just providing or just like talking internally, like with ourselves about like whether it's opportunities or whatever, but also looking externally and working with organizations like the FSGA. Not this past winter conference, but the one beforehand, Ed Williams. I worked for Ed when he was still with NBC, but he reached out to me around the December, January timeframe before last year's winter conference. And he was like, hey, I heard something about the cookout initiative that you got going on. And it's actually kind of coincidental. I'm putting together a panel for this upcoming conference. And we want to talk about minorities and like diversity and have people come up and tell their stories and all of that. Like, do you have some people that could do that? I was like, I've got plenty of people that could do that. It was Kendall Valenzuela, Justin Henry, James Coe, Jorge Martin. Who else was on the panel? I think that was it. Oh, Dan Titus as well. Dan Titus is now at
Justin Henry.
Yeah, Justin Henry. Yep.
Yep.
Justin was on there too. And he's a massive guy too. Like I still can't believe like how tall, like how big that guy, big ass brother. Yeah, come on. But it was like, but that was the moment where it was like, okay, this is real. But it was good that we were like adding people and folks are coming in and sharing their work and collaborating and having people go on their Twitter spaces and like arguing about this, that, and the third and all that. But it's now like once we're seeing outside recognition, like people asking us to come in and like have a voice like at their conference, have a voice at their event, and seeing that blossom from there, it's really allowed me to like regain my purpose like in this industry, because like I don't really think that now with 15, 20 years of engineering experience, I'll be able to switch careers at this point in my life, but being able to help others and bring them up. And like I mentioned, because I've been so fortunate to work for so many companies and meet so many people and know so many owners, content managers, chief content officers, CEOs, like whatever title that you want to put to it, I can put them in contact with those people. I can provide them at least the connection that they need to make in order to maybe bring their skill set to the point where they can get the opportunity they're looking for. Because my goal was really I didn't have the goal to do this full time, but other people do. Other people that look like me do. And now that I've been fortunate to know kind of the people that can pave that pathway for others, like Tara Roberts, like we were talking about earlier, being able to, I guess, make that connection and say like, hey, like she's really good at this skill set that you're looking for. So why don't y'all talk? All right, cool. I'm going to go off and do my own thing and have some drinks over the craps table. All right, great. All right, I'm going over here. Like that's where it becomes rewarding for me. And that's where the cookout now has like started to like really take shape, and to say that like we're not just here to help each other. Like, and that's one of our goals, but it's also to bring in like that next generation of content creators. Like who's the next? I mean, like, Ray Garvin is like, he's super established at this point. Like I remember Ray when Ray and I were at DLF together for about like 6 months. I had one meeting with Ray. We were talking with the partners about like setting up their YouTube channel and all that. And I just heard like Ray go off for like 5-10 minutes straight about the ideas and stuff that he had for content, blah, 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 blah. I was like, yeah, that dude's going somewhere. I ain't going with him. Like he's off on his own thing. Like I'm never going to make it like to where Ray's at. But it's like, who's going to be the next Ray G? Like who's going to be the next, Jordan Richards? Who's going to be the next Marcus Grant? Who's going to be the next like James Cook? Like who's going to be the next people, that speak like them, look like them, and whatever. And that's what I'm hoping that the Cookout can build into, and we can start to usher in like that next generation of minority content creators. And that's been so far, it's been like very rewarding to see at least people speak up and say like, hey, like I want to, these are my goals. This is what I want to do, and all that. And now hopefully with some more time and some more guidance and some more support, like from FSGA and other companies within the industry, we can really start to change the look of the industry for the better.
It's a fantastic movement, and obviously the best is yet to come. I can't wait to see where things go with that. Again, it's something that I keep hearing about the things that you're doing behind the scenes, and it definitely fits in with the Cookout group. I love to see that kind of stuff. I love to hear that, and it just seems like you found your passion when it comes to, like you've described, like helping people. You're not going to be full time in the industry because you've got a life outside of this industry. But I love that you're a facilitator, you're a point guard. I love every aspect of that. Gets me excited just thinking about it. And you've mentioned a lot of great people, and it's exciting to know that they've got your support, and the best again is yet to come. I love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hopefully we'll see. We'll have a few more people at the summer conference. Of course, all of us, as many people as I can get to the expo. I keep telling people to come to it as much as possible, because the FSGA, as well as I do, the cost to get out to an FSG event is pretty expensive. Expo is not. So you can meet some pretty good people out there as well. At the very least, just make friends. See other people that you might talk to just normally on Twitter or wherever. So to make that like face-to-face type of connection that you won't normally get, I think it's just it's a maybe once a year experience, not once in a lifetime, at least once a year experience that can give you that energy that will make you want to do more. So bringing people into the Cookout, getting them to events like that so they can see and feel that energy and like try to like help like kind of start that snowball effect. Like that's really what I want to do.
I love it. Let's dive into some no limits Q&A. I'll provide some rapid fire questions. You just let me know what first comes to mind. Not
All
necessarily rapid fire on the answer. Whatever comes to mind. What do you love most about playing the game of fantasy football?
Drafting. It has to be drafting. That's where I think I have the most fun doing that, because if it's live drafting, so much the better, because then you're shit talking with people and it's like, I can't believe you took that dude. Like I'm going to be able to get the same guy like 3 rounds later and all that. But also just the team, like the creation of the team itself, because the season is chaotic enough as it is. And there's no way that you can say at the start of the year that, your team, like, whatever happens, like happens afterwards. But right there in the draft, that's when it's like, oh, I know I've got the best team like right now. At least I feel that way after I get done drafting. And then of course it all, goes to hell like after the opening kickoff of the season. But at least drafting for me is like the most fun I have.
I love it because you always win the draft, right?
Oh, always. I know I haven't lost a draft yet.
Never. Undefeated.
Fantasy championships. Now that's a completely different story.
Yeah.
But fantasy drafts ain't lost one yet.
I love it. What do you enjoy most about what you're doing in the industry?
Still writing. I still love writing. That's like I mentioned beforehand. It's the easiest way for me to focus all of what's going on in here and being able to put it in my voice. With podcasting, it's not as easy for me to do that. Even at like 40, 41 years of age, I still feel like I'm in competition with some of my It's not to say that like working with like, some of the greats like Ian and Dwayne, or being on like live TV shows with Matthew Berry and did a couple of shows with Golden Tate. But you always feel like you have to be like you have to be at your best. Like you have to be just like like people have to walk away from this, from this podcast thinking, oh man, that Chris Allen dude, like, oh, he put Matthew Berry on notice. Like that's the mindset that I have when I go and do stuff like that. But so with writing, it's just me. It's just me talking. and I don't have to contend with the other thoughts of, all right, well, Dwayne said this, so like I gotta change my thoughts. So it's like, oh, okay, so maybe I'm gonna come at it from this perspective. Oh, Ian said this, all right, so that means I gotta do that. No, it's just me doing it, and that's easier for it. And so when you read stuff, you'll always hear it like from me. It's just like genuine 110% me, where I don't have to contend with the other stuff. So for me, like it has to be writing.
I love it. What are your favorite hobbies and activities outside of sports?
Poker, video games, and homebrewing. I've been doing homebrewing for a little over 10 years now. Do a brewing competition down in Cincinnati like every year. Won a few awards doing it. Maybe if you have opted into doing the SFB live event down in Cincinnati, there might be some of my stuff there. We're trying to work something out, so I can bring like a sample or two there, like to wherever we're going to be drafting at. But even if you ask me, I'll probably just send you. I'll send you, a growler or two like your way. But yeah, like those are my, like, outside of being a dad. Like the obvious answers are my hobbies are being a dad, and also, but of course, like outside of that, if it's just me, yeah, video, like playing some video games if I ever get a chance, like playing cards, and homebrewing.
I love it. What's the best style of beer that you make?
Oh man. Okay. So I like IPAs. Please don't hate me. People listening, don't hate me. I will give the caveat because so TJ Hernandez, I used to work with him over at 4for4. He said, he has a good point that IPAs are terrible because they don't really show you how good of a home brewer you are, or how good of a brewer are in general, because you can just like put a whole bunch of hops in something, fruit in something, and mask whatever imperfections or impurities you might have in your process. So, and that point I do agree with him on. But at least my favorite style, at least within the umbrella of IPAs, are milkshake IPAs, because it allows me to mask some of that stuff if I screw up, like every now and again, which I happen to do. Because I'd like to add in some lactose sugar to make it a little bit sweeter, some fruit on the back end to like have a more tropical edge to it and all that. That's how I've won like a couple of awards off of making recipes that are like that. But that's my favorite style for sure.
I love it. I love it. Now, if you were going to construct an ideal foursome for a round of golf, you got to name 3 other people that are going to join you in that golf cart. Who is it?
First off, it has to be like for me, it has to be John Daigle.
Okay.
Yeah, worked with him briefly over at NBC. We've been friends for the last like 3 or 4 years. Just a wonderful human being. I'd love to just play golf with him at some point. So yeah, definitely him. If I had to think of 2 more people just to play golf with, I wouldn't mind actually going out to play a round of golf. If I could play golf with Evan Silva just to see like how far he would get like through a round of golf without completely breaking all of his clubs and just getting frustrated, which I'm pretty sure he would probably wind up doing that. He's gonna give me a call if he listens to this episode, because if I'm talking shit about him, I'll probably get a call from Evan at some point. But him, like in the industry, has to be in the industry.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep it. We'll keep. Let's see. I will say the third person that I would like to play golf with. I'll be a homer. I'll be the company man again. I'll play golf with Matthew Berry. I'll see if he be. I assume he's got to be a good hang.
Yeah, I think that'd be fun. That'd be a fun round for sure.
I think that'd be a pretty fun round. Like I don't think he's that much of a drinker. At least I'm assuming he's not. But at the very least, just go out and like have a few beers and like a round of golf and just listen to his stories of like being in the industry for how many years. I think that'd be a good. I think it'd be a good time.
It's good answer. Good answer. What's your all-time favorite TV show?
All-time favorite TV show? Scrubs. That's
good.
probably easily it's probably Scrubs. I think I've watched that series back 5 or 6 times or so.
It's so good.
Yeah, just like I think it was a fun story. So many funny parts to it. Just the dynamic between like Zach Braff and Donald Faison. I thought they did such an excellent job. Like doing the whole best friend bit like for a while, even though they are friends like outside of the show. But yeah, I love that show.
Nice. How about an all-time favorite movie?
Favorite movie? So that's tough because I like a ton of them. Probably like one of my favorites, like Boondock Saints has to be up there as one of my favorites. Kill Bill, probably the first one, still up there, just from like the not just the cut to like the animation portion, where they had like that anime section, like where they showed, I forget her name, they showed like her parents getting killed. But also I just like the idea of like the feminine like warrior, like, you know, heroine like type of thing. And
Sure.
also that's where I got I call my daughter, like her nickname for me is Kiddo, from Beatrix Kiddo, like from Kill Bill. I just love it because one was like she's an ass kicker. My daughter is actually pretty badass as well. She's
That's
actually
awesome.
yeah, she does intel like for the Air Force. She's enlisted in the Air Force now, and she does
Amazing.
yeah. But yeah, I think that's probably like one of the two at least that easily stick out, like outside of, you know, classics and all that. But just yeah, from
Sure.
Pulp Fiction to like whatever, like I think those stick out.
How about a sports movie?
Sports movie, Remember the Titans, just because it came out like around like when I was graduating high school, playing football. Even though, I mean, you've seen me, but for other folks that haven't seen me before, like right now at like 40 years of age, I'm like 5'9", like a $170. So imagine me like 20 years ago, like how small I was back then. I think I weighed like just under 100 pounds, like my freshman year of high school. But yeah, like when that movie came out, it was like 2001 when it came out, and or 2001 when it came out. High school football, watching that movie with like all the guys like on my high school football team, we're like all getting like freaking pumped up and all that. I will never forget like watching that.
That's awesome. How about a favorite musician or artist or band?
Favorite musician, I could probably listen to like either I could probably listen to Talib Kweli. Like for the longest time, I thought he was just like before he became like mainstream, but like hip hop artists, I could probably listen to his music like all day long. I
Nice,
think I
nice.
listened to like all of his albums like throughout like most of college. But yeah, like, and I saw him live like one time when it was like he came and it was Talib Kweli and DJ High Tech, because High Tech is from Cincinnati. I can't watch like one of their shows. This was back in like 2003, I want to say, like somewhere around there. But it's just like that type of like social conscious hip hop that I really do enjoy. And like him, Most Def, Common, even like Common like went like more R&B, but like those types of rappers I always found to be like some of the best. Like even like Kanye West, like to like when he first came out, and then he, you know, whew, yeah, that brother went through some things like after that. But it was those guys that like when I was like in college and going through like, yeah, like some folks in college that go through the whole like poetry phase and like I'm giving like all super like introspective phase. I listened to those guys at the same time, and it was like they really spoke to me back then.
Nice, nice. What are you most grateful for at this time?
My wife. I think that's like, is that a cliche answer? I
No,
don't
it's a
know.
good answer. That's
Yeah,
probably that's the
for-
right answer, right?
yeah, because like we've known each other, like we dated in high school, been together like off and on, like but for the most part since then, and like she's been the one that's kind of kept me in line for the most part. Like I've had like I've gone through so much, just like personally, and trying to get through like college and grad school, and like we had a kid like we were like our daughter when we were much younger. But she has been just like my rock and kept me like from completely going off the deep end. And I tell people a lot that like if you had met me like maybe like 10 years ago, probably wouldn't have been like, you know, like, oh, that Chris dude, he's all right, but I think something a little off. But she's like helped me like become like the man and the father that I am now. So like without her, like I wouldn't have any of this at this point. So like yeah, for her, like yeah, that's the easy answer for me.
That's beautiful. No, I love to hear that. So obviously we are kind of in the off season. I mean, fantasy football. There really is no off season. It's just a bunch of different events, right? What's your favorite part of the off season of the in between the end of the season and the beginning next fall?
Just taking the time to sit back and either like both enjoy life, you know, go out and touch grass, as some of us say, but also take a look back at the season beforehand. I know that there are some folks, and I've seen like this whole thing about, you know, got to be transparent. Like how many leagues did you win and how many hits and misses that you got. And, you know, that fantasy receipts account and like just, you know, monitoring people, like what they're saying and all that. I try and do that personally. And actually, I'm writing a couple of articles for Fantasy Life that walk through some of my hits and misses like from last season. But I think for me, it's like I like doing that and taking a look back because I'm very much a process oriented person. I think I still have that shirt from RotoWare. That's the process over results shirt that they had like however
Yep.
many years ago, and I love it. I mean, I just love that because it's like you could uh, hit on a winning best ball roster that's going to win you $2.5-3 million, and then not do anything else for the rest of your career, rest of your life if you want to do that. Is life changing money. But
Yeah.
it's fairly interesting that the same type of people wind up getting into like the final rounds of these best ball tournaments every single year. It's not really much of a surprise to me that Pat Carrain, Pete Overzet, like Chess Liam, like all of those guys like wind up doing because they have the right process to approach like some of these things. So going back and taking a look at how you wind up selecting players, how you wind up drafting teams, constructing teams, and all that, I think the offseason allows us to do that. And that's one of the better parts of like the better components of the offseason. I really do like it's where it's less about the live fire of what's going on in the season, who got injured here, who's getting more targets and less touches and all this other stuff there. It's now we can actually take a sit back and think about these players, think about the situations, think about who the like what their skill sets are, all of that before again everything just goes to hell the moment we get back all get back together in September.
For sure, yeah. Obviously, you can sharpen your process during the off season. I love it.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, you have done an incredible job getting established in the industry. We've talked about all the different places you've contributed. There's a lot of people that do want to get more involved in fantasy and in the fantasy space as a content creator. What advice do you have for those individuals?
I'd say the one thing, if I could go back and tell myself like 6-7 years ago, I have a goal. And even if the goal is that you want to have 10,000 followers on Twitter, or the goal is you want to do this full time, the goal is you want Matthew Berry to know who you are, like whatever your goal is, like have a goal. Because if you just come in and say like I want to start a podcast, I mean that's not to say that's a not worthwhile goal, but then it's like, okay, well, once you get the podcast, like then what? Or once you start those Twitter spaces, like, well, then what? It's okay. So that's where it's like, if you have a goal that requires like a, certain amount of, like certain amount of work in order to attain it, then it sets your mindset as to like, well, these are the things that I have to do to get there. Or even if you don't know how, like what it takes to get there, you're going to have to start putting yourself out there and putting yourself in those situations where you're going to ask those questions to other people. It's like, well, I've gotten this far, but my goal is this. How do I get there? And that's where you will meet people that have stumbled. You meet people that have succeeded. You meet people that are, whatever the case may be. And I think if I had actually sat down and thought about that beforehand, maybe I might have done things a bit differently. Maybe I would have done things a bit more efficiently versus just like stumbling along the road until I got to this point. But I think that's where sitting down and like just being honest with yourself about like where you really see yourself going, like once you create that Twitter account and once you buy that Blue Yeti microphone and that $30 piece of shit webcam, it's like, well, where are you going to take this? Like, what are you going to do with it afterwards? And I think one of the quote at the end of Boondock Saints, and this is like where I get like super nerdy. It's like, once you start doing this, it's like the question isn't how long you're going to do it, how many years you're going to be in it. The question is like, do you have the faith to go as far as is needed? And that's where setting your goal and saying that this is what I want to do with my time here in this industry. That's what sets like, well, that's how far you got to go. And after you figure that out, it becomes a little bit easier for you to make your way like within the industry afterwards.
Fantastic advice. I love every ounce of that. That's incredible. Is there anything else that we haven't covered before we close things out here? That was awesome.
I can't think of anything else actually at this point. I think I'm at a loss for words, which some folks might say that that's almost impossible to do at this point in my life. But no, I think that's it, man. I can't thank you enough for having me on. I think that this is one of the more important endeavors like in this space, and I'm not saying that like no bullshit and like no nothing. Like you get on Twitter, like everybody else, like that you get on Twitter right now, it is loud on Twitter, and we are in the off season. The Super Bowl was like 10 days ago, and we're already arguing. We're arguing about prospects, draft, dynasty, next year's redraft. It's loud. But again, like I was saying earlier, you go to the expo, you don't see none of that there. So it's just having a platform like this where people get to share their stories and share their perspectives and just share their path to get to where they are. Man, this is what's important. Because don't nobody care about like what your thoughts about like Malik Neighbors is going to be at like the next like 4 or 5 months. But somebody might watch this show or any of the other shows that you're doing and say like, hey, I really connected with that person that you just had on. Like, where can I find their stuff at? Or no, I really connected, like, this path or this experience that this person had, like, that's happened to me too. Maybe I should go and talk with them. Like, that's what's important, like in this industry right now. So like, I think you right there, like you are doing like the Lord's work, man. Like all this other bullshit that people are talking about right now. I mean, it's what people have to do in some cases in order to pay the bills. But like this stuff right here, I think we need more of this, like more people talking about just like real stuff, like real things that are happening within the industry, like in their path to get there. So I appreciate you, man.
Hey, no, I mean, that hits me right where it counts. I mean, it's what it's all about to me. It's about connections, and you summarized it so well. Like that's what I want. I want people to discover analysts that they can connect with, so they can enhance their enjoyment with fantasy and the fantasy leagues. Because everything it goes beyond, to me, fantasy leagues go beyond the game of football and the fantasy game, right? To me, it's about the connections, the league experience, the bonds, the relationships that get formed in fantasy. And that's what I want to do. I want to share stories and share resources so that people can, dive deeper into the game and just create better relationships out there in this world. So, I mean, I appreciate every word you just said. That means a ton to me, and I'll keep going as long as people will be listening, and I'll keep going if people don't listen, because if I can affect one person, it's worth it to me. So,
yeah, man, you just won an award. You got to keep going now.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Like if that would be so terrible if you just won an award and then just do one show and just me on here, and then it's like, well, you know what, guys, that's it. I've got what I need and I'm out. Like, you got to keep doing what you're doing, man. So keep going.
Right on. Sounds good. That is the plan. That is where we're going. So I appreciate it. Absolutely thrilled to have you on again. You've made a huge impression on me just from hearing other people's stories about how you've affected their lives. To me, that's what it's all about. So it was an honor to have you on here. I can't wait to see what's ahead of you and ahead for you in 2024.
I appreciate you, man. Like, you ever want me back on, we can talk ball, we can talk life or whatever. You got me. Like, just give me a call whenever you need me.
Sounds like a plan. I will certainly do so.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast. Until next time, be sure to follow and subscribe to all of FFU's social media accounts for daily content.